The people voted for major government reform. There should be no doubt about that. That was on the campaign. The president spoke about that at every rally. The people voted for major government reform, and that's what people are going to get. They're going to get what they voted for. And a lot of times, people that don't get what they voted for, but in this presidency, they are going to get what they voted for. And that's what democracy is all about.
Well, guys, it looks like that big constitutional crisis that the media has been hyping up has successfully been averted because Donald Trump and his administration just won in federal court. These people cannot stop taking defeat after defeat after defeat. It is frankly hilarious. We will tell you about it here today, but first, folks, do us a big favor. If you're enjoying the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel down below. Okay, you subscribing is the best way to support our work. And with that said, I think this is very important. This is actually monumental, and if this ends up going to the Supreme Court, I'm really hoping that our conservative Supreme Court comes through here, because what has been happening, if you've not been following, and we've discussed this a little bit with DOGE, is you have these judicial activist liberal judges who are basically just trying to stall and delay everything the Trump administration attempts to do.
This is a massive fraud that's taken place, and then you have judges that are activists, and they sit there and they say, as an example, $59 million going to a little small group in New York City. You get nothing going to North Carolina to help nothing. They say, we don't have any money because they've given it away on the border. But you have nothing. What they did to North Carolina is a shame. And then they sent $59 million to New York City for a hotel for a little bit of nothing, what they've done. A hotel that was not luxury, that's getting luxury rates for migrants, where they're making a fortune, and we catch them. But a judge says, well, even though it may be a fraud, you have to send the money in anyway. Send the money. I said, wait a minute. We have money that shouldn't go because we caught it before it was sent out. But they want the money to go anyway.
And keep in mind, this is not a matter of you have actual serious courts in this country that are looking at the constitutionality of Trump's actions and trying to determine whether or not they're constitutional. No, what's been happening is district low-level liberal judges in very liberal cities have been just putting temporary stays and restraining orders on everything that DOGE, but the Trump administration as a whole, largely here tries to do. So that way their hope is basically they can stall and delay everything that Trump is able to do with these restraining orders, and then ultimately they can run out the clock on Trump's presidency, right? So basically, we're not actually ruling here. It might take 2 to 3 years for the Supreme Court to decide, but in the meantime, they were trying to make sure the Trump administration would have to sit on its hands and do absolutely nothing. And guys, it's worth noting before we tell you what happened today, this was always the real constitutional crisis. Not Trump trying to clean up our government, but rather activist judges trying to overstep their bounds and their authority. I'm just saying.
Many outlets in this room have been fear-mongering the American people into believing there is a constitutional crisis taking place here at the White House. I've been hearing those words a lot lately. But in fact, the real constitutional crisis is taking place within our judicial branch, where district court judges in liberal districts across the country are abusing their power to unilaterally block President Trump's basic executive authority. We believe these judges are acting as judicial activists rather than honest arbiters of the law. And they have issued at least 12 injunctions against this administration in the past 14 days, often without citing any evidence or grounds for their lawsuits. This is part of a larger concerted effort by Democrat activists and nothing more than the continuation of the weaponization of justice against President Trump. Quick news flash to these liberal judges who are supporting their obstructionist efforts. 77 million Americans voted to elect this president. And each injunction is an abuse of the rule of law and an attempt to thwart the will of the people. As the president clearly stated in the Oval Office yesterday, we will comply with the law in the courts, but we will also continue to seek every legal remedy to ultimately overturn these radical injunctions and ensure President Trump's policies can be enacted.
Well, we have an update for you here today because the Trump administration has indeed pursued every legal avenue to remove these injunctions, and they have been successful because as of today, a federal judge has sided with President Trump, saying that he does indeed have the authority to freeze or restrict federal funding. And it goes without saying that this is a massively monumental ruling because this is very fundamental to what DOGE is going to do. If you are unable, if the president has no authority, according to our courts, to oversee the spending of federal funding that is appropriated by Congress, then literally the president basically has no authority to do anything, and we are forever beholden, according to what these activist judges would be saying, to the unelected federal bureaucracy. So it goes without saying, this is monumental. This is a huge legal victory, and here are some of those details.
So clarifying that the government can limit access to federal funds on the basis of the applicable authorizing statutes, regulations, and terms. Essentially, yes, the government can do so in complying with regulations, and then that the previous order does not bar both the president and much of the federal government from exercising their own lawful authorities to withhold funding without the prior approval of the district court, meaning, again, they can disperse the monies that they were allocated within the law, within the confines of the law, and that the government does not have to seek preclearance from the courts on terminating funding as long as they have the authority to do it as governed by the applicable statutory, regulatory, or grant terms. So essentially, the court is confirming what the Trump administration has maintained and what common sense can project, which is that within the confines of regulatory and normal authority, of course, you can do what you want with your own money, and you don't need a court's approval to do so.
So essentially what the court ruled today is that, newsflash, President Trump is the president. Wow, number one. And of course, number two, you do indeed have the authority to decide how your own money is spent. You know, it is true that Congress appropriates those funds, but it's the executive that oversees the distribution of those funds. And in that case, you do have the ability to freeze or restrict or put temporary pauses on things. There is no mandate saying that like all of the money Congress puts to one department or whatever has to be spent entirely at once. And yes, reforms can indeed be made to the federal workforce at the hands of the president. I mean, this is big, right? It goes without saying this is massive because it also stated, and this is very important, that President Trump and his administration do not need to seek pre-clearance from the court, essentially permission to do anything that they want to do. And that is very important, obviously, because you don't want this administration, as I was saying, as I was warning about, to be spending the next 4 years just trapped in court, trapped in litigation, and in the meanwhile, nothing in the real world is actually happening because the courts have held it up. And by the way, here is a great explanation from Scott Jennings on CNN as the other panelists melt down, but this is frankly the truth about this situation. No, what Trump is doing, he has the authority to do. You actually can exercise oversight as the executive. And yes, these wasteful and oftentimes corrupt and subversive federal bureaucracies are not actually above the law. Because let's remember, as they told us, nobody's above the law, just saying.
Well, I think there's a difference between saying whether you're complying with the law and then you have these individual district court judges setting effectively broad federal policy that is specifically reserved for the president of the United States. I think we do have a constitutional crisis, and it's being caused by these judges. They're not here to tell us. They're not here to tell us how to spend the money. They're not here to set broad federal policy. That is the president's job as elected by the people. These judges are supposed to be settling discrete, specific matters, not policy setting. I think Vance is right. I think Trump has a point. And these judges want nothing more to continue the lawfare against
I don't
Trump.
think anybody's in the executive branch saying, no, I don't feel like it. And the courts say you have to.
Well, my answer to that simply is it is the executive branch's job to figure out how to spend money once it is appropriated by Congress. And sometimes they spend money that's not been appropriated. But the correct political control is between the executive and the Congress, not some random federal judge.
There are not repercussions. You get away with it.
I get it. You want individual federal judges who hate Donald Trump.
No, I don't.
To tie him up for 4 years.
No, I don't.
If you want a big policy questions decided, let the Supreme Court do it. But in the interim, the executive has to be allowed to govern.
Am I wrong about that?
Well, you're supposed to comply, but Scott's absolutely right in that the court cannot say you have to spend these dollars today. So as a governor, I dealt with this. We got things challenged in state court and federal court. It's all judge shopped, by the way. Judges don't randomly get these cases. There's a reason that these cases are filed in Boston, the Boston court, or a certain district, Rhode Island, because they know they're going to get a judge.
That's the right point. Should the president, the singular president, should he have to share the presidency with 300 district court judges? No, absolutely not.
But the point, though, you made a really good point that there have been judges that shut down some of President Biden's executive actions, and they understand, the Biden administration understood the checks and balances.
The Supreme Court tried to stop me, but they never will.
But not in the way that Donald Trump is.
Who said that? Not in the way that
Joe Biden. But
Donald Trump
Scott, he actually didn't ignore it.
He did. Right. They continue to plow forward with student.
Yeah, that's exactly right. These low-level district judges do not and never had the authority to be setting broad federal policy. Those issues are to be determined by the Supreme Court. But in the meantime, since when does the District Court of San Francisco have the authority to basically just tell the president, hey, don't do anything without asking us first? Is that how the chain of command is supposed to work in our federal government? And again, broad issues of constitutionality should be decided by the Supreme Court. But in the meantime, the judicial activism here, again, it has to stop. But none of these arguments that I believe this video is from last night, if I'm not mistaken, from those CNN panelists, arguing with Scott Jennings, exactly aged very well, because what happened today? Again, what's the update here? A higher level federal judge just ruled in Trump's favor, stating that, yes, you do not have to wait for pre-clearance from the District Court of San Francisco or Boston to take actions as the president. Newsflash. I know, very impressive there. So there you have it, guys. Again, DOGE is now able to move full steam ahead with its plans. This is monumental, huge first step into ensuring the government reform that we promised in the 2024 election. Now, with that said, let us now tune in to the protests happening in DC, because they continue to get more and more ridiculous. Every single day, someone is out there protesting DOGE. Very interesting that they're all happening in DC and basically nowhere else. But here's the current state in reaction to all of this of the Democrat Party. And yeah, the ridiculousness just continues. Take a listen.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Tell me, which side are you on? Which side are you on? We'll fight against DOGE. We'll fight Elon Musk. No Elon scab within our walls. We'll fight from dawn to dusk. Oh, which side are you on? Which side are you on? Tell me. Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Trump's coming for our unions. He wants us all.
It's still going, by the way. They're still going.
He wants us to bow to him, but we want him in jail. Oh, which side are you on? Which side are you on? Tell me. Which side are you on? Which side are you on? They say in the capital city
they're still going.
There are no neutrals found.
Are you serious?
You're either with the union or a scabby Musk bloodhound. Oh, which side are you on?
Okay, enough of that. I guess I'm a scabby Musk bloodhound. I should add that. Those are my pronouns, actually. I identify as scabby / Musk blood / hound. There you go. There you go. Listen, guys, here's the situation. We're going to move full steam ahead. As Elon said yesterday in his press conference, as a matter of fact, I want to play part of this just to clarify and debunk a lot of the media lies about this. No, our government is corrupt, okay? And first of all, I do not exactly understand how Democrats think it is a winning message to and this is what they're arguing right now, is essentially our federal government is not corrupt. Really? Really? Does any American believe that? Go stand out on the street in any city in this country and just ask 5 people, hey, do you think the American government is corrupt? See what answers you're going to get. But it's important to understand, and I think it is very telling, as I've been saying repeatedly, why they are in such vicious opposition to DOGE. And it has nothing to do with issues that really impact their voters. As I've said before, it's one thing to be a Democrat and fight for something like abortion or illegal immigrants or LGBT or healthcare or so, those are things that Democrat voters care about. But even the Democrat voters do not really care a whole lot about something like USAID. No, what's going on here is the politicians are protecting their own corruption and in some cases their own corrupt special interests and lobbyists and donors and all of that. And that's exactly what's going on. And frankly, it is so big now that we can move ahead because now let's continue to expose everything that has been happening. But with that said, I think it is important to listen to again. Yesterday, Trump decided to invite Elon Musk and his son X into the White House Oval Office. And here is Elon for about 4 minutes here. Again, very important listen, clarifying the lies about DOGE as well as calling out some of these reporters to their face in terms of the things they've been saying. And here's a kind of detailed mission statement. I think it's very important because so many lies, so much slander has been done that we now have our own platform to tell the American people what's actually going on and the truth behind the curtain.
If there's not a good feedback loop from the people to the government, and if you have rule of the bureaucrat, if the bureaucracy is in charge, and then what meaning does democracy actually have? If the people cannot vote and have their will be decided by their elected representatives in the form of the president and the Senate and the House, then we don't live in a democracy. We live in a bureaucracy.
Well, first of all, precisely true. What meaning does the word democracy have that they scream over and over again? Nothing. It's a nice way to like present something because democracy sounds good to people, but ultimately you have basically a bureaucracy. You could call it an oligarchy, a deep state, whatever. When they say defend our democracy and Trump is a threat to our democracy, that's what they're so scared of, that Trump is going to overthrow and overturn this current like snake of permanent power structure in our government that is not accountable to the people or really anything, and not even accountable to the politicians themselves. Again, that's what precisely they're so afraid of, is now someone's actually doing something about it. Big.
And also, could you mention some of the things that your team has found, some of the crazy numbers, including the woman that walked away with about $30 million?
Right.
Etc.
Well, we do find it sort of rather odd that there are quite a few people in the bureaucracy who have ostensibly a salary of a few $100,000, but somehow manage to accrue tens of millions of dollars in net worth while they are in that position, which is...
I wonder who he's talking about. I wonder why these politicians are so afraid of DOGE, huh? Isn't that interesting?
You know, what happened to USAID. We're just curious
saying.
as to where it came from. Maybe they're very good at investing, in which case we should take their investment advice, perhaps. But just there seems to be mysteriously they get wealthy. We don't know why. Where does it come from? And I think the reality is that they're getting wealthy at taxpayer expense. That's the honest truth of it. So, we're looking at, if you look at, say, Treasury, for example, basic controls that should be in place, that are in place in any company, such as making sure that any given payment has a payment categorization code, that there is a comment field that describes the payment, and that if a payment is on the do not pay list, that you don't actually pay it. None of those things are true currently. So the reason that departments can't pass audits is because the payments don't have a categorization code. It's like just a massive number of blank checks just flying out the building. So you can't reconcile blank checks. You've got comment fields that are also blank, so you don't know why the payment was made. And then we've got this truly absurd, a do not pay list, which can take up to a year for an organization to get on a do not pay list.
Yeah, so just to be clear, the reason I wanted to play that segment right there is to also clarify all of this drama that's been happening around the Treasury, because you've heard all these like nonsense made up talking points from the Democrats that Elon Musk is going into the Treasury to steal all of Americans' personal data or something like that. I don't even, but this is the point, right? This is actually what they're really trying to do, is they want to go into the Treasury so that way they can basically mandate that, hey, you guys have to be able to pass an audit. Hey, when you send out money, there has to be a payment categorization, which is not a crazy idea. Every business has to do it. You know, I'm a self-employed technically according to the IRS. And when I file my taxes and I write off my business expenses, I have to categorize the payment. I can't just tell the IRS, yeah, I spent $100,000 in expenses this year. Just believe me, right? I have to say, look, this was for food. This was for travel. This was for gas. I don't know, but you have to actually categorize. Again, every business has to do this. Every self-employed or business owner, you know, everyone does this. This is commonplace everywhere. And I think it is so ironic, by the way, that the IRS, our own federal government, when you're declaring your taxes to them and you're writing off expenses or payments, you have to declare it. You have to categorize it. In some cases, when they audit you, you have to actually provide evidence of it. But yet, when they take our taxpayer dollars at the Treasury and distribute them to places, they don't categorize them. They don't explain or show you where they're going. And then again, why do you think none of our federal government can pass a single audit that they themselves are running? It's ridiculous and it's insane. So again, it really does beg the question, if that's all they're doing, if they're just asking, hey, we need to see where your money is going, why are the Democrats and the media causing such a freak out and panic about it? Well, there's only one conclusion there. And that's that the money is going to corrupt places. You know, there's probably a reason why they don't want to categorize or explain where that money is going. And, you know, they're very worried that if you actually uncover this stuff, it's going to show, well, you can speculate for yourself. You can speculate for yourself why they have a vested interest in, you know, not declaring or being transparent with where their own money is going. But nonetheless, okay, big victories all around. We're going to keep looking into it. DOGE has now fully been unleashed thanks to the courts, okay? Thank you for averting that constitutional crisis by ruling in our favor. Very important. And with that said, guys, let me know your thoughts on all of this in the comment section down below. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe if you are new, and until next time, God bless and peace.